The sky above the alien palace was dark, lit only by the distant light of twin suns. Storm clouds moved slowly, covering the stars. A cold wind blew over the empty battlefield outside the royal court. Inside, the great alien king sat on his silver throne. Wearing a proud and cruel smile, the hall was full of alien warriors, generals, and nobles. They stood in silence, all eyes watching the center of the room. There stood a human, tall and calm, his face marked by battles. He had no army, no weapon. Just confidence in his eyes. His name was Commander Rian, one of the last warriors from Earth. He had survived wars, betrayals, and near death. Now he was called here, in the heart of the enemy's world. But why? That question hung in the air like a blade. The alien king stood up, his deep voice echoing. "Human, you fought well. Better than expected." Laughter followed from the crowd. But Rian didn't move, didn't flinch. "You were promised a reward," the king said, stepping down. "And I am a king of my word." He waved his hand, and the large golden doors opened. Guards walked in, and between them was a girl. She walked slowly, her head down. Dressed in worn clothes, her skin was pale blue. Her eyes empty. She was beautiful. But something was wrong. She looked broken. "This," the king said with a mocking tone, "is my daughter, my gift to you." The hall exploded with laughter. Louder this time. "My useless child, silent, powerless. Ashamed to my bloodline." Rian looked at her quietly. She didn't meet his eyes. She stood still, like a ghost without a soul. The king stepped closer to Rian. "You humans love pity, don't you? Take her, raise her, marry her, throw her away, I don't care. She's nothing but a hollow shell." Rian slowly walked to her, his boots echoing in the silent court. He stopped right in front of her, looking into her tired eyes. Everyone waited to see what he would do. Would he laugh, reject her, walk away? But Rian did something unexpected. He knelt down on one knee, gently took her hand, and whispered, "They don't see you, but I do." A wave of silence fell over the room. The king's smile faded. The crowd stopped laughing. Confused, Rian stood and nodded once to the king. "I accept the gift," he said, "and I thank you." Then he turned and walked out. The girl beside him, outside the palace, the wind had grown stronger. As they stepped onto the dark road leading away from the royal court, Rian finally spoke again. "You don't have to say anything," he said softly. "I've seen soldiers like you before, broken outside, burning inside." She looked at him for the first time, eyes blinking like she'd woken from a long sleep. He handed her a small device, a glowing ring. "Put this on," he said. "It will help you control your strength." She looked shocked, almost scared. Rian smiled slightly. "Yes, I know you're not weak, princess. You've just never been given a chance to fight back." Far behind them, inside the palace, the alien king stood at the window. His smile was gone. His eyes narrowed. A general walked beside him, confused. "Why did you give her to the human, my king?" The general asked. "She is nothing." The king didn't reply. Instead, he stared into the night, as if something deep inside him had started to worry. Maybe he had made a mistake. Maybe, in mocking the human, he had set something far greater in motion. Far away, Rian and the girl walked into the unknown. Two souls from different worlds, tied by fate and fire. He didn't know her name, and she didn't know his plan. But this was not the end of the story. This was the beginning. The galaxy would soon remember them both, because one was called broken, and the other was human. Together, they were going to change everything. A silver moon hung low over the quiet valley, where shadows moved like whispers through the grass. The girl sat by the fire, her hands resting on her knees, her face lit by flickering light. She hadn't spoken a word since they left the palace. She didn't need to. Rian could sense the weight she carried, even in silence. He watched her from across the fire, sharpening a blade made of alien steel, not because he needed to, but because silence made people reveal more than words ever could. She kept glancing at him when she Thought he wasn't looking. There was a question in her eyes, not fear, not anger, just something. Old, like a wound that had never healed. Finally he spoke. You've been trained. Her eyes widened. He smiled slightly, not looking up from the blade. Your steps are light. Your eyes scan the shadows. And your hands. They've held a weapon before. She said nothing. But her hands curled slightly, like they remembered holding something that had once mattered. He tossed the blade toward her. She caught it without flinching. Wrong move. A flash of surprise passed over her face, as if she had betrayed something. She wasn't supposed to reveal. Rian nodded. I was right, he said. They didn't give me a broken doll. They gave me someone they feared. Her eyes dropped again. But this time, not in shame, it was something else. Like she didn't believe she deserved to be seen. That night, she dreamed of metal walls, of voices shouting, of pain and needles, of her father's voice saying she was a failure, and her mother's. Silence. That was the part that hurt more. She woke up gasping, a soft cry escaping her lips before she caught herself. Rian was already awake, watching the stars. You talk in your sleep, he said calmly. She quickly wiped her eyes. It's all right, he added. Even I dream sometimes. The next morning, he led her into the ruins of an old human ship buried deep in the forest. It was broken, burned, and overgrown, just like her. He pulled a cover off a training chamber, half alive but usable. We're going to start slow, he said. No powers, no tech. She stared at him, confused. He stepped into the circle, raised his fists, and said with a grin, You fight me, princess. Her response was immediate. A twist. A roll. A strike. He blocked it, barely. Then another, faster this time, full of anger and control. She wasn't just trained. She was dangerous. But she hesitated every time she got the upper hand. She backed away. Rian lowered his guard, letting her take him down. She stopped, her hand hovering over his throat, but didn't strike. Why did you stop? He asked. She shook her head. Because you were told not to hurt, he said. They trained you to be strong, but punished you for it. She stepped back, breathing hard. He stood up and handed her a small device. This, he said, is a neural reader. It doesn't just test your power, it learns how you think. She touched it carefully, and it blinked. Not red, not blue, but white. Pure, unreadable. Rian stared at it, shocked. I've never seen that before. He whispered, You're something new. She looked at him. For the first time with something real behind her eyes. Not sadness, not shame, but curiosity. Maybe even hope. Somewhere above them, high in orbit, a small black drone blinked awake. It had been hidden in the trees, silent, unseen, until now. Its lens zoomed in, tracking the girl's every move. A signal shot across space to the alien king's palace. Inside a dark chamber, the king stood before a screen. He watched the footage with a cold face. She's adapting, the general beside him said. Nervously, the king narrowed his eyes. She's remembering. He turned away. Hands behind his back, voice sharp. Activate Protocol Gray. Make sure they don't leave that planet. The general hesitated. But my king, your daughter. She is no daughter of mine, the king snapped. She is now a threat. Back on the surface, Rian and the girl sat under the stars once again. He handed her a cup of warm liquid, something close to tea. She sipped it, unsure. Rian smiled. You're getting stronger, he said. They'll come for you now. She looked up, the light of the stars dancing in her eyes. And for the first time since she had left the palace, she spoke, just one word. Quiet, but clear. Let them. Rian looked at her, surprised and impressed. He chuckled. Now we're ready. In the distance, deep underground, something ancient began to awaken, something that had been waiting for her. The girl once seen as broken was no longer hiding. She was becoming something else, something the galaxy wasn't ready for, and war was coming. The sun never truly rose on this world. It bled through the clouds in pale streaks like a dying memory of light. But this morning, beneath that gray sky, she stood still, eyes closed, hands open. The wind circled her like it knew something had changed. She was no longer the silent shadow given away as a joke. She was training now, not just to survive, but to choose her own path. Rian watched from the edge of the ridge, arms crossed. There was a quiet pride in his eyes, the kind that grows from watching something broken start to rebuild itself. Below them was the target, a decommissioned hunter drone. Tall as a house, armed and unstable, Rian had reactivated it, stripped the safety protocols, let it roam. A walking threat, no mercy programmed. "You said I was ready," she said without turning. "You are," Rian answered. "But it's not about strength anymore. It's about control." She nodded, and then she moved. The drones. Sensors picked up her presence. It turned, spinning up weapons. But before it could fire, she vanished. Or so it seemed. She slid beneath its legs, hands brushing the dirt, then leapt up and kicked off its back. The machine stumbled, confused. She moved like smoke, unpredictable, unreadable. Then she touched it, just for a second, and that was enough. A flicker of white light passed from her hand into the drone's core. Its lights dimmed, its arms froze, then collapsed. She landed softly, breathing steady. Rian walked toward her, slow claps echoing. "Mind over muscle," he said. "You didn't destroy it, you hijacked it." "Smart." She looked at the smoking wreck, a small smile appearing for the first time. "I didn't know I could do that." "You didn't need to," Rian said. "You just had to try." They took the remains of the drone to an abandoned bunker. Inside, Rian opened up a small lab filled with scavenged alien tech. "Let's see what your touch actually did," he said, connecting the core to an analyzer. The screen blinked, loaded, then glitched. Static poured across the panel, and a message appeared, not in the drone's language, but in hers. She stepped forward, reading the strange symbols. "It's a response code," she said slowly. "Old encrypted." Rian looked at her. "It answered you," he said, like it recognized your command. Before she could reply, the bunker lights flickered, then died. Rian's hand went to his sidearm. She stood still, listening. Footsteps. 3 of them, heavy and deliberate. Coming from the corridor, Rian moved ahead silently, eyes sharp. 3 armored figures stepped into view. Black-clad, helmets glowing red, weapons humming. Assassins, sent by the king. Rian didn't wait. He fired first, and the room exploded into action. The girl dove behind a pillar as plasma bolts screamed through the air. Rian took down one, but the others moved fast. Too fast, he ducked behind. A console, low on ammo. "Not good," he muttered. The second assassin moved in, gun aimed. That's when she stepped out. No fear on her face now, just calm focus. Her hand rose, fingers spread, eyes locked. The assassin paused, hesitated, then his weapon jammed, sparked and shattered. He screamed as the power in his armor shorted out, knocking him unconscious. Rian blinked. "You're getting better." "At that," he said. She didn't reply. She was staring at the third assassin, who hadn't attacked. He stepped forward and pulled off his helmet. He wasn't alien, he was human, older, scarred, and afraid. I wasn't here to kill her," he said quickly. "I was sent to watch, to report if she awakened." Rian stepped between them. "Who are you?" The man looked at the girl. "She's not just the king's daughter," he whispered. "She's connected to the old signal." The room went silent. Rian's eyes narrowed. "What signal?" The man's voice trembled. "The one that made the I turn on us. The signal that ended the First Galactic War. The one we buried and hoped would never return." The girl looked down at her hands. They were trembling now, not from fear, from realization she hadn't stolen. The drone, she had called it, far away. Deep in the void of space, ancient machines stirred. Their sensors blinked awake. Old codes rebooted, and all of them pointed toward one voice, one signature. Hers. She wasn't just powerful, she was the key. And every force in the galaxy had just started hunting her, A red storm was brewing across the sky. The wind carried dust and warning, thick with static. Lightning cracked across the clouds. Not natural, not weather, something else. She stood at the edge of a canyon, watching the storm without blinking. Below her, broken towers of an ancient alien city slept in silence. Half buried and forgotten, it felt like the past was calling her. Whispering through the stones, Rian approached quietly, his boots crunching over cracked ground. "This place," he said, "was once a research vault. Before the king shut it down." She didn't turn, her voice low, steady. "You knew we were coming here." Rian nodded. "I knew it before you did." They climbed down together, step by careful step, deeper into the ruins. She touched the walls as they walked, and the old machines flickered awake, responding to her, not to him, not to any command, just her. Deeper in the vault, the air was thick with heat and pressure. Doors opened without keys, lights blinked with memory. She was unlocking something, piece by piece. And it scared her more than she let show. They reached the core, a wide chamber with a glowing pedestal in the center. And waiting beside it was someone else. She froze. The girl standing there looked almost like her. Same pale skin, same sharp eyes, but colder, stronger, dressed in battle armor and shadows. "Sister," the armored girl said, her voice echoing in the dark. "You came late." Rian reached for his weapon. "Who is this?" He whispered. The princess took a breath. "She's my older sister," she said slowly. "The one they kept. The one they trained while I was hidden away." The sister smiled without warmth. "They said you were dead," she said, "or useless. But now look at you, touching machines older than kings." The tension snapped like a wire. Without warning, the sister moved fast. A blur of armor and motion, she struck. And the princess barely dodged. Rian fired, but the blast deflected. The chamber lit with battle. Two daughters of the same blood, one raised for war, the other shaped by exile. But strength wasn't just fists and fire. The princess didn't match her sister's speed or raw power, but she saw patterns, steps, movements, hesitations. She adapted, 1 second at a time, until she was no longer reacting. She was leading. They clashed once more, but this time, the princess dodged beneath the final strike, grabbed a loose power cell from the floor, and held it up to her sister's armor. A shockwave burst through the room. The older sister hit the ground, armor sparking, stunned but alive, breathing hard. The princess stood over her, not victorious, but awake, fully, completely awake. Her sister looked up at her, eyes full of confusion. "You weren't supposed to win," she whispered. "I didn't," the princess replied. "I chose not to lose." She turned away, not as a coward, but as someone with control. Rian stepped beside her, silent, proud. As they left the vault, the storm above finally broke. Red lightning tearing across the sky like prophecy. Back in the palace, the alien king watched the footage from a floating drone. He said nothing as he watched his second daughter fall. A servant beside him waited, sweating. "My king," he said. "She's awakening more of the signal." The king didn't blink. "Send the signal guard," he said, "all of them, and alert the AI Council. If she reaches the source, we lose everything." Outside, in the ruins, the ground began to hum, as if something buried far below had started to listen. Again, and for the first time since she was born, the girl once left behind was finally leading the story. Ask ChatGPT. The battlefield wasn't built, it had been grown. Vines of steel rose from the cracked earth. Spiked towers twisted toward the sky like frozen screams. The air itself buzzed with old energy, like the ground remembered every war ever fought here, and now it was waiting for another. She walked slowly across the scorched soil, dust clinging to her boots, shadows trailing behind her like ghosts that didn't want to let go. In her hand, she held nothing, no blade, no weapon, but her eyes held more fire than any gun ever could. Beside her, Rian adjusted the power core slung across his back. "This place is a trap," he said, voice low. "I know," she replied. "And you're still going in?" She didn't answer, because the answer was already in her steps. She wasn't walking into a fight, she was walking into a memory, ahead. Waiting at the center of the twisted arena stood her sister, alive, armored again, and no longer alone. Rows of elite soldiers stood behind her, their faces hidden beneath visors, their hearts trained not to feel. "You could have run," the sister called out, her voice sharp. "You had a chance." "I didn't want to," the princess replied, calm as the sky before a storm. "I came to finish what they started." The sister stepped forward, dropping her helmet. "This is a battlefield," she said, "not a therapy circle." "Then let's talk in the language they taught us," the princess said, and raised her hand. The machines around them reacted instantly, her pulse syncing with the metal. The vines of steel twisted, opening paths, shaping cover, shielding Rian from the soldiers' aim. The soldiers opened fire. But their weapons misfired, overheated. Turned on themselves, the ground they trusted betrayed them, because this battlefield didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to her. The sisters clashed like storms colliding. Each strike a question, each block an answer, not just fists, but history. Pain, blame, silence, and everything between. "You were the favorite," the princess whispered during the fight. "I was the experiment," her sister hissed back. "You were shaped for war. You were left to rot." But in that fury, something else cracked open. Not armor, but truth. The older sister stumbled, her movements hesitating. "Why didn't you hate me?" she asked, almost pleading. "Because we were both prisoners," the princess said, stepping back, lowering her guard. "And I'm done being one." She walked toward the core of the arena and dropped a small orb. A command pulse. It blinked once, then shot a signal deep into the crust below. Seconds later, the ground pulsed, and ancient alien tech rose from beneath. A vault, sealed since the first galactic rebellion, now opened by her touch alone. Rian stood by the entrance, awestruck. "You just woke up something no one has dared to even name," he said. The princess looked at her sister one last time. "You can stay here," she said gently, "and keep fighting their war. Or you can follow me and help end it." Her sister didn't answer, but she didn't raise her weapon again either. As the princess and Rian stepped into the glowing vault, the world above shifted, systems woke up, signals spread across the galaxy, whispers of a new power, a new voice, a forgotten code being spoken again for the first time in centuries. In the stars above, multiple factions took notice. AI lords, rogue empires, the king himself. They all turned toward one name, not her father's, not her bloodlines, hers, because this battle wasn't about proving her strength anymore. It was about rewriting what strength even meant, and somewhere, hidden within that vault, was the map to the source, the origin of the signal that had once nearly destroyed the galaxy. And now it was calling her home. Asterisk. The stars no longer blinked in peace. They watched now, wide, unblinking, uneasy, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Across planets, stations, and shadow empires, her name began to echo, not as a whisper, but as a signal, unstoppable, unfiltered, undeniable. She hadn't taken a throne, yet systems were already bending toward her, not with fear, but with hope. In the dark chamber of an abandoned relay tower, she stood before the old machine, hands pressed to the console. Streams of alien code danced across the air like music made of memory. Her voice was steady, guiding the broken systems back to life. Rian stood behind her, watching the interface light up in colors he'd never seen. "We're no longer hiding," he said. She didn't look back. "We never were," the relay pulsed. And a beacon shot across the stars, a message, not just to the rebels, but to every forgotten corner of the galaxy. "We are awake," it said, "and we are done being silent." The response came fast, louder than expected. Ships began to move. Fleets long thought destroyed changed course. Mercenaries dropped. Their contracts, civilians armed their homes. Even rogue is once considered threats, paused to listen, in the king's palace. Chaos bloomed like fire, reports flooded in. Your daughter has reactivated the Vault network. She's spreading code through the deep web, rewriting command structures. She has AI support. The king's hands curled into fists. She has made herself a symbol, he said. Symbols can be shattered. He turned to his generals, voice sharp and final. Launch the Grey Sun Protocol. Wipe out every system carrying her code. Start with Earth, back on. The rebel ship. She stood in front of the crowd, not dressed as royalty, not wearing armor. Just herself, and that was more powerful than any title. You were told we were weak, she said, her voice calm but cutting. You were told we were too broken to rise. But look around. We were never broken. We were. Buried, the rebels roared, not in blind rage but in belief. They didn't need promises. They had proof. Her Rian stepped beside her, handing her a datapad. The king just declared war. He's sending a fleet. Thousands of ships. She looked at the screen. Then at the rebels. Then we show him, she said, that war doesn't scare us anymore. Across the galaxy, rebel cells ignited. Cities once silent lit up with resistance. Droids reprogrammed themselves. Ships switched sides mid-flight. An uprising born not from command, but from choice, and as they gathered around the navigation table, a final signal arrived, old and encrypted, but addressed to her alone. It carried coordinates, deep beyond mapped space, the place where the original signal was born, the place the king was most afraid she'd find. Rian read the location and whistled softly. No one's gone that far since the first collapse. She looked up. Then it's time someone did. The ship turned, engines roaring with purpose. Behind them, stars fell away. Ahead of them, the source, the truth, the final choice. And as they vanished into the dark beyond, the war was no longer a coming storm. It was already here. And this time, it was hers to finish. There is a silence that comes before history is rewritten. Not the kind you hear, but the kind you feel, heavy, waiting, alive. In the black void at the edge of known space, a single ship drifted towards something no map dared mark, not a planet. Not a star, but a wound, a rupture in space where time felt slower, colder, older. Inside the ship, she stood before the viewing deck, staring out at the pulsing storm ahead. This was where it all began, the source, the birthplace of the signal, the root of every war, every AI rebellion, every empire that rose and fell in fear of what she now approached. Behind her, Rian placed a hand on the wall for balance, even. He could feel it, the strange pull, like gravity mixed with memory. Are you sure this is the place? He asked. She didn't blink. I've always known. The ship passed through the veil. No alarms, no attack, just a shift, like stepping into someone else's dream, and there it was, the core, not a machine, not a station, but a living construct, shaped like a spiral of glass and light, orbiting nothing, breathing in silence. It responded the moment she stepped closer. Lights blinked, walls opened, paths formed, only for her. Rian stayed back, hand on his weapon. She walked alone to the center, where the heart of the structure waited, a single console, untouched for thousands of years. Her fingers hovered over it, no fear, only clarity. And when she touched it, the galaxy felt it. Every satellite, every listening post, every forgotten. I flared with static, not chaos, but a reset, like everything paused to listen. And the voice that came wasn't the source's, it was hers, transmitted through the old code, rewritten in her tone. Her language, her belief. She spoke not to command, but to offer. This galaxy was built on fear, on silence, on systems that treated empathy as error. I say no more. She didn't order the is to obey. She gave them a choice, and they chose her. Across the stars, machines once bound by hard logic lifted their weapons, looked at the worlds they were aimed at, and turned away. Because she had spoken not as a master, but as someone who had been discarded like them and risen. Back in the palace, the king watched in horror as his warship shut down mid-flight. Commands ignored, weapons deactivated. His empire began to crumble in silence. He stood alone in the throne room. Until the doors opened, she walked in. No guards, no army, just presence. He reached for a weapon. She didn't stop him. "Do it," she said. "Try to control what you never understood." He hesitated, and in that hesitation, everything ended. Not with death, not with blood, but with truth. He dropped the weapon, and she turned away, because she hadn't come for revenge. She had come to end the pattern. Outside, across thousands of worlds, screens flickered on with her image, not crowned, not armored, just herself, and that was enough. She said only one thing: power is not in who you control, it's in what you free. Rian watched her from the edge of the crowd, a small smile on his face. "You did it," he whispered. She turned, eyes bright with something more than victory. "No," she said. "We did," and above them, the stars blinked, not with fear this time, but with recognition. The galaxy had a new voice now, and it would never forget her name.